Chapter 1524. After escaping from the mine, Miss Luan began to provide high-level technical support to Situ Chitian, and once again modified the biohumans to make them more efficient. Meanwhile, Situ Haotian began to establish the Immortal Cultivation Chamber of Commerce, mainly responsible for helping Miss Luan inquire about the whereabouts of the Purple Mist Nefarious Lotus, as well as establishing a good relationship with the major sects and families in the cultivation world. After hearing that the Purple Mist Evil Lotus was in the Dark Green Devil Valley, Situ Haotian immediately increased the expansion of the Immortal Cultivation Chamber of Commerce. In addition to making a lot of money for research, he also wanted to find suitable candidates to go to the Dark Green Devil Valley to collect the Purple Mist Evil Lotus. After Situ Chitian finished listening to his adoptive father's description, he couldn't help but admire the other party's business acumen. Then, he had a flash of inspiration and came up with a rotten idea, which was to let him lead a group of mountain bandits to plunder the places where the Immortal Cultivation Chamber of Commerce was having a hard time developing. When those merchant sects couldn't hold on anymore, they would have to rely on the Immortal Cultivation Chamber of Commerce to hold the fort. Situ Haotian immediately agreed to Situ Chitian's suggestion. The two of them planned for a while and arranged for a bandit's hideout in the impoverished Ba-Sien County. They then set up a mountain bandit's nest in Lucien County and began to plunder without restraint. As expected, it was quite effective. Just as the two of them were ambitiously preparing to go all out, the leader of the bandits was killed by Cheng Menjiang. They had just captured Cheng Menjiang, and the mountain bandits' lair had been destroyed by Xiao Chen. Situ Chitian was naturally very depressed. Situ Haotian had used his old connections and sent out Elder Nangong to kill Xiao Chen without a trace, but he had failed and returned. In addition, the search for the Purple Mist Nefarious Lotus had already entered the most intense stage, so he had no choice but to have Situ Chitian stop the horse bandits and mountain bandits project. He planned to first use all his strength to find someone who could enter the Jade Green Devil Valley. After that, he sent Nie Xiaoyu to break into the valley but failed. He then captured Tang Tang and sent her into the valley. He finally managed to bring back the Purple Mist Lotus, but he didn't expect Xiao Chen to appear in front of him like a god descending from the heavens. Most importantly, when did Xiao Chen collude with Huan Chen Pavilion? The Immortal Cultivation Chamber of Commerce didn't investigate this information at all. Situ Chitian, are you stupid? This young master is asking you a question. Aren't you dead? Could it be that he had become a big dumpling? You don't even know how to talk. When Xiao Chen saw Situ Chitian staring at him in a daze, he shouted impatiently and jumped down from Wizard's spirit beast along with Nie Xiaoyu. You must be Xiao Chen, right? Before Situ Chitian could reply, Fu Qinghao had already surrounded him with a group of subordinates and called out in a very friendly manner. Fu Qinghao was also afraid that Situ Chitian would rise in revolt and do something disadvantageous to Xiao Chen. Hence, he immediately ran over, patted Xiao Chen's shoulder, and said warmly, "Hohu, I didn't expect that little friend Xiao is actually so young. Heroes indeed come from youngsters. This time, you helped our illusionary dust pavilion greatly. This food definitely won't treat you shabbily." Situ Chitian naturally understood the intention of Fu Qinghao's action. It was obvious that he had specially come over to support Xiao Chen. His words implied that Xiao Chen was from the illusionary dust pavilion and warned him not to act rashly. However, Situ Chitian was not a fool. He naturally could not attack Xiao Chen, who he could not figure out, immediately. He could only fake a smile and change the topic. "So, Xiao Chen, you've sided with the illusionary dust pavilion. No wonder great sect master Fu thinks so highly of you. I really couldn't tell what your strength is now." "Of course." Without waiting for Xiao Chen to speak, Fu Qinghao straightened his back proudly and interjected, "How can little friend Zhao's strength be something that you can probe? If you don't want to ask, then don't ask. What's the big deal? But I'm a little curious. It's not like you have a constitution that allows you to be immune to poison." Situ Chitian's gaze secretly glanced at Nie Xiaoyu, who was not far away, and he continued. You're not some living dead person either, so why are you still safe and sound after entering the jade-green demonic valley? Xiao Chen was slightly shocked. Just as he felt that there was something wrong with Situ Qitian's words, he saw that Situ Qitian's gaze was wandering. Following his gaze, he just happened to see Nie Xiaoyu and Li Xian happily whispering to each other. So, you're the one who captured Cheng Menjing and Nie Xiaoyu. Xiao Chen was instantly enraged. He grabbed Situ Qitian's collar and roared fiercely, "Hurry up and release Cheng Menjing, do you hear me? Otherwise, believe it or not, I'll make you fly in 128 different postures." Situ Qitian's face flushed red from being suddenly grabbed. He was about to retort when a coquettish cheer suddenly came from not far away. "Husband Xiao Chen. You're finally back. Were you injured in there? I was waiting outside for you so anxiously." As soon as Xiao Chen finished speaking, an exquisite figure threw herself at him. Xiao Chen's expression relaxed slightly, and he loosened his grip slightly, tossing Situ Qitian to the ground. Then, he turned around and hugged Hongzhu, whose face was filled with joy. Cough, cough, cough. Situ Qitian coughed a few times and finally managed to catch his breath. Just as he was about to organize his words to ridicule Xiao Chen, he raised his head and saw Hongzhu kissing Xiao Chen a few times. After that, Hongzhu carefully examined Xiao Chen's body and found that there were no obvious wounds on his body. Only then did he relax. The way Hongzhu acted as if no one else was around stunned the surrounding people of the Fantasy Dust Pavilion. "Don't worry, I'm fine." Xiao Chen gently patted Hongzhu's shoulder, then pointed at the Baizé spirit beast and Nie Xiaoyu. "We also accidentally found Nie Xiaoyu and that brain-damaged spirit beast in the Devil's Valley. It can be considered a pleasant surprise. As for the specifics, I'll tell you in detail later." Hongzhu nodded obediently. He knew that Xiao Chen had important matters to attend to. After kissing him again, he walked to the side and whispered with Nie Xiaoyu and Li Xian. Turning his head to glare at Situ Qitian, who had just gotten up from the ground, Xiao Chen's tone became a little dangerous. "Situ Qitian, have you thought it over? Are you going to let him go obediently, or do you want this young master to make you fly a few more times?" When Fu Qinghao saw the way Xiao Chen treated Situ Qitian, he could not help but be slightly taken aback. He immediately realized that there was definitely a grudge between the two of them, and it was probably not a small matter. He immediately rejoiced in his heart. It seemed that this kid was definitely on his side. Situ Qitian was very displeased. He straightened his clothes, which had been pulled askew by Xiao Chen, and made a mental draft. Just as he was about to open his mouth to speak, he was interrupted by Fu Qinghao. "Little friend Xiao, have you found the materials? Why don't you give them to me first? Once we're done, I'll definitely help you get justice." Chapter 1525. "Who the hell are you? I don't even know you." Xiao Chen could not help but roll his eyes. Ever since he came out earlier, this old fellow had been following behind him, trying to please him. It was as if he was very familiar with him. Xiao Chen did not know where he had come from. It was simply ridiculous. I'm sorry. I was too excited and forgot to introduce myself." The corner of Fu Qinghao's mouth twitched. He forced a warm smile and said, "I'm the sect master of the Fantasy Dust Pavilion, Fu Qinghao. Wu Gang and Do Ling, the ones who asked you to help find the amethyst nefarious lotus, are my disciples." Although he looked warm on the surface, Fu Qinghao was a little depressed in his heart. There weren't many people who dared to speak to him like this in recent years. If it wasn't for the amethyst nefarious lotus, he would have exploded long ago. "Oh, it's you." Xiao Chen only noticed Wu Gang and Do Ling who were following behind Fu Qinghao. He thought of his mission and shrugged helplessly, "There's nothing left. Situ Qitian's men have taken everything. I've searched the entire jade-green demonic valley and couldn't find a single one. Only the root of the amethyst nefarious lotus is left." Xiao Chen could have come out earlier, but in order to reconstruct the Elder Heaven ancestor's body, he still held onto a strand of hope. He searched the demonic valley for a while, but he couldn't find the amethyst nefarious lotus. What did you say? They've all been taken? Fu Chenghao's expression changed. He could no longer suppress the anger in his heart. He pointed at Situ Chitian's nose and scolded, "Situ Chitian, aren't your men a little too much? They actually took all the amethyst nefarious lotuses? Do you think you can do whatever you want just because no one can restrain you?" The reason why Fu Chenghao did not doubt Xiao Chen's words at all and was so certain that he vented his dissatisfaction on Situ Chitian was not because he trusted Xiao Chen, but because when he saw Xiao Chen come out earlier, apart from the woman by his side and a huge spiritual beast, he was completely clean. He did not seem to be carrying anything at all. Aside from Xiao Chen, the woman was also empty-handed. The spiritual beast did not carry any baggage either. At that time, he was still puzzled as to why Xiao Chen had run out without completing his mission. In the end, it turned out that there was nothing left for him to take. Just now, when Situ Chitian wanted to speak, he was interrupted a few times. At this moment, he was so depressed that he simply crossed his arms and rolled his eyes, choosing to ignore them. Although Situ Chitian was silent, Fu Chenghao wouldn't let him go so easily. He continued to scold him. "Don't think that I don't know your background. The Dada Immortal Cultivation Chamber of Commerce was founded by you. If you really dare to take the amethyst nefarious lotuses for yourself, I'll spread the news immediately. Let's see how you can survive in the immortal cultivation world." Situ Chitian finally couldn't take it anymore after being scolded by Fu Chenghao. He put on an indifferent expression and waved his hand. "Do whatever you want. If you want to publicize it, then do it. Anyway, it won't be long before our Dada Immortal Cultivation Chamber of Commerce surpasses the Huanshan Pavilion and becomes the #1 force in the immortal cultivation world. We'll see who can't survive then. Ha ha ha. You shameless villain." Fu Chenghao gritted his teeth in anger. His face turned green and red, but he couldn't do anything to Situ Chitian, who was holding a precious treasure. He could only stare at him angrily, clench his fists, and breathe heavily. "You idiot, you're actually from the Dada Immortal Cultivation Chamber of Commerce?" Xiao Chen was a little surprised to hear Fu Chenghao's words, but he immediately understood. No wonder the Chamber of Commerce used the secular world's rules and regulations. What contract, employment, and compensation? It turned out that it was all done by this kid. Looking at Situ Chitian's complacent look, Xiao Chen frowned and asked coldly, "I don't care what organization you're from. I just want to know who you sent to the Green Devil Valley. Was it Cheng Menjiang? Quickly let her go. Then hand over the amethyst nefarious lotus. Otherwise, I'll tear down your Chamber of Commerce one by one. Little friend Xiao is right. Quickly hand over the thing." Fu Chenghao immediately echoed loudly and looked at Xiao Chen approvingly. He thought that Xiao Chen said this to help Huanshan Pavilion, so he immediately had a good impression of him. Previously, he wanted to kill him after getting the amethyst nefarious lotus, but now it seemed that he could let him live in the future. But what Fu Chenghao didn't know was that Xiao Chen really wanted the amethyst nefarious lotus, but not for Huanshan Pavilion, but for the Elder Heaven Ancestor. If he was going to reconstruct the body of the Elder Heaven Ancestor, it would be impossible without this kind of treasure. So once he got the amethyst nefarious lotus, Xiao Chen would definitely hand it over to the Elder Heaven Ancestor immediately. Huanshan Pavilion was nothing. "TSK, you don't have the ability to collect the amethyst nefarious lotus, and you want me to give it to you? You can't be stupid, right? Did you get struck by lightning when you were teleported out just now?" Situ Chitian sneered and pointed to the wooden house not far behind him. He said in a strange tone, "The amethyst nefarious lotus is in that wooden house. If you're not afraid of death, then..." Ouch! Before Situ Chitian could finish speaking, he was pushed by Xiao Chen. Losing his footing, he fell flat on his face on the ground, stars spinning around in front of him. Xiao Chen passed by Situ Qitian, whose head was covered, and turned to look at him. He did not even bother to look at him and headed straight for the wooden hut. The immortal cultivators who were originally standing behind Situ Qitian wanted to block Xiao Chen's path, but when they saw what was behind him, fear appeared on their faces. They all retreated to the side and made way for him. At first, Xiao Chen was prepared to kill a few people to suppress the situation. He didn't expect these guys to be so obedient and not dare to act rashly. He couldn't help but feel a little puzzled. But looking at their expressions and glancing out of the corner of his eye, Xiao Chen finally understood what the reason was. It turned out that Fu Qinghao was closely following behind him, probably wanting to go in and get a share of the loot. It seemed that the one these people were really afraid of was the sect master of Huanshan Pavilion. Xiao Chen thought to himself, I wonder how strong this old fellow is, to actually make people not even have the courage to resist him? But at this time, Xiao Chen couldn't care so much. The wooden house was already in front of him. He directly flew up and kicked open the very simple door. Walking into the wooden house, Xiao Chen saw the crystal shield in the middle of the house at a glance. There was a human-shaped soul floating inside, probably in the shape of a woman. Chapter 1526. Xiao Chen turned his head and saw a huge electronic instrument next to him. The glass carrier in the upper part seemed to be fusing something, and someone was constantly pouring some purple powdery medicinal materials into it. While thinking about what the purple powder was, Xiao Chen inadvertently glanced at some purple petals scattered on the ground. A thought flashed through his mind. It seemed that the powder should be the purified purple mist lotus. Looking at the incredible scene in front of him, Xiao Chen could not help but be confused. He felt very puzzled. How could there be such an advanced electronic instrument in the cultivation world? It was too strange. Moreover, that crystal shield looked very high-end. Who was the female primordial spirit inside? Where did the Dada Immortal Cultivator's Chamber of Commerce get this technology? That silly Situ Qitian did not seem to be the person who could make this kind of thing. Before Xiao Chen could figure out all of this, a voice that was gnashing its teeth suddenly resounded behind him, "Little friend Xiao, it was that stinking whore who entered the Jade Green Devil Valley to pick the purple mist evil lotus. Let's kill her first, and then take back all the materials." The person who said this was Fu Qinghao. He followed Xiao Chen into the room and saw the crystal shield and the electronic instrument, but he was more concerned about the barrels of purple powdery medicinal materials and Tang Tang, who was sitting in the corner in a daze. After seeing the main culprit, who harvested the amethyst nefarious lotus, Fu Qinghao couldn't help but get angry. If it wasn't for this chick, Xiao Chen wouldn't have failed to harvest even a single amethyst nefarious lotus. This matter was still on her head. Now that all the purple mist lotus had been refined into powder, and more than half of it had been poured into that strange container, there was basically nothing left on the outside. Fu Qinghao was so angry that a vicious idea suddenly came into his mind. He planned to kill Tang Tang first to vent his anger, and then join forces with Xiao Chen to snatch the container. At that time, he would study how to use that inexplicable thing. If he couldn't figure it out, he would smash it, and then pour out all the purple mist lotus powder that he had already poured into it. Then, he would use his sect's treasure, the divine dragon cauldron, to refine it again. Thinking of this, Fu Qinghao felt that the plan was perfect. He took the lead and rushed toward Tang Tang. He thought that since Xiao Chen was on his side, as long as he made the first move, the kid would definitely follow him. When he made his move, Fu Qinghao was still very proud. He thought that after he killed Tang Tang on the spot, Xiao Chen would become a grasshopper on a rope. Their relationship would be so close that he couldn't run away even if he wanted to. The leader, Situ Haotian, had been focused on the electronic screen. Coincidentally, the female mannequin in the computer had been set up. He turned around and saw this scene. He immediately flew into a rage and shouted, "Fu Qinghao! You old fart, you're simply going too far. You actually dare to attack my people in my territory. Are you tired of living? In order to prevent Fu Chenghao from destroying the electronic equipment here when he killed Tang Tang, Situ Haotian immediately activated his mind cultivation method and was ready to rush over to stop him. However, when Situ Haotian had just taken a step, Miss Luan suddenly said, "You don't have to do anything. Naturally, someone will deal with Fu Chenghao. You just need to stay here and protect the equipment so that it can operate smoothly." Situ Haotian was wondering who else besides him could restrain the powerful Fu Chenghao. In a blink of an eye, he saw a figure quickly appear in front of Tang Tang. Then, he casually lifted his right leg and aimed at Fu Chenghao's chest, who was constantly approaching, and kicked heavily. "You!" Fu Chenghao could not help but be shocked when he saw that the person who blocked him was actually Xiao Chen. However, it was too late for him to stop rushing forward. He could only quickly mobilize his primordial qi to protect his chest where his heart was. A hint of gloomy killing intent flashed in his eyes. Fu Chenghao knew that Xiao Chen was just a master at the mountain opening stage and would not pose any threat to him. So, he only needed to protect his vital parts and block this attack. However, Xiao Chen, who originally thought that he was on the same side as him, actually stepped forward to protect Tang Tang. Although Fu Chenghao did not understand why Xiao Chen did this, he had already decided in his heart that when this matter was over, he must eliminate this guy who only paid lip service to him but secretly opposed him. Crack! While he was thinking about the next plan in his heart, Fu Chenghao suddenly heard a crisp sound of bones breaking, and then a sharp pain came from his heart. Fu Chenghao's expression changed. He slowly looked down in disbelief. He saw that his chest, which was originally protected by primordial qi, had been kicked by the tip of Xiao Chen's foot. "Even if you want me to kill someone, you should first figure out the relationship between me and Tang Tang. You even dared to touch my wife. With your stupid IQ, I don't think you need to live anymore," Xiao Chen said coldly. Before Fu Chenghao could say anything, Xiao Chen injected a light primordial qi into the sole of his foot. He glanced at him as if he was looking at a dead man, and then suddenly stomped his foot. An enormous strength instantly pushed Fu Chenghao backward. His body was like an arrow that had left the bow, and with a "so" sound, he smashed a hole in the wooden house that had just been built. Then, he shot out of the hole, passed through the lake, and set off a series of splashes. Finally, with a clang, he smashed right into the bronze cauldron in the camp of the Fantasy Dust Pavilion. The cauldron was originally standing on the rugged ground, and it had been a little unstable. After being hit by Fu Chenghao, who suddenly fell from the sky, it immediately began to shake, and the shaking became more and more severe. It looked like it was about to fall down. When the surrounding disciples of Huanshan Pavilion saw this, they quickly ran over and wanted to hold the cauldron to prevent it from shaking. However, the strong impact of Fu Chenghao's impact, coupled with the weight of the cauldron itself, made it impossible for those disciples to stop it. The bronze cauldron fell down. First, it mercilessly crushed those disciples into meat paste, and then it smashed unstoppably on the hard ground. A very subtle crack sounded. Suddenly, a faint crack appeared on the bronze cauldron, and then it continued to expand at a speed visible to the naked eye. In just a few breaths, the cauldron had been covered with cracks. With a bang, it broke into pieces and fell to the ground, turning into pieces of copper fragments. As soon as the cauldron broke, a human-shaped spirit floated out of it. It floated around involuntarily, and its expression looked very flustered. Chapter 1527. The primordial spirit floated in the air and struggled a few times. In the end, it couldn't hold on and was immediately blown away by the wind. It turned into air and instantly disappeared from the calm surface of the lake. It had already turned into ashes. The disciples of Huanshan Pavilion who were still in the camp were all dumbfounded. They were so shocked that they couldn't speak. The bronze cauldron contained the primordial spirit of their sex ancestor. After their ancestor's physical body was destroyed, he had been resting in the cauldron, waiting for the day when he could rebuild his physical body. Originally, when they found out that the amethyst lotus had ripened, they excitedly dragged the divine dragon cauldron to the jade-green demonic valley. They were looking forward to getting the amethyst lotus and immediately helping their ancestor's primordial spirit to rebuild his physical body. When their ancestor regained his physical body and came out again, Huanshan Pavilion's position in the immortal cultivation world would be even more unshakable. However, just now, their beautiful wish could no longer be realized because they saw their ancestor's primordial spirit dissipate in the air. The elders of the Fantasy Dust Pavilion all had ugly expressions on their faces. They could see the situation very clearly in their hearts. Sect leader Fu Chenghao was already dead, and the ancestral master was also gone. This news would soon spread to every corner of the immortal cultivation world as if it had grown wings. At that time, the sects and clans that had been following behind the illusionary Dust Pavilion covetously would immediately swarm over and swallow up the leaderless illusionary Dust Pavilion cleanly, leaving not even a scrap behind. Thinking of this, the few elders looked at each other and immediately turned to leave silently. They had to find a partner who could give them the most benefits before the news spread. The disciples of Huanshan Pavilion seemed to understand something when they saw this. They hurriedly followed their followers and left. Wu Gang and Dou Ling were nowhere to be found. The once famous number one sect in the immortal cultivation world had instantly collapsed and no longer existed. Xiaofan laughed coldly as he looked at the chaotic fantasy dust pavilion not far away. He shrugged his shoulders without a care in the world. The reason why Xiaofan wanted to kick Fu Chenghao to death just now was that he thought this guy was really a bastard. He had tricked him into the Green Devil Valley to collect herbs, and when he came out, he did not ask whether he was dead or alive, but only focused on the purple mist Black Lotus. The point was that he also wanted to kill Tang Tang, so he might as well just kill her. As for the chain reaction that followed, it was not something that Xiaofan could predict. Tang Tang didn't know what had happened. She only felt her vision blurred, and then Xiaofan, whom she missed day and night, suddenly appeared in front of her. At first, Tang Tang thought she was dreaming. She rubbed her eyes hard and stood up to grab Xiaofan's arm. Only when she felt his body temperature did she know it was true. She could not help but ask with excitement and concern, "Xiaofan. You? Why are you here? Are you all right?" "I'm fine. I'm in good health and I'm eating well." Feeling the warmth coming from his arm, Xiaofan smiled slightly and asked, "Tang Tang, how did you get caught? Have you seen Menjing?" Xiaofan originally thought that it should be Cheng Menjing who was locked in the wooden house, but he did not expect it to be Tang Tang. The whole wooden house was only so big. Xiaofan had looked around and there was no trace of Miss Tang. At this time, Situ Haotian was also very shocked. The way he looked at Xiaofan had become a little cautious. It should be known that Fu Chenghao, as the leader of Fantasy Dust Pavilion, was extremely strong, almost at the same level as him. He did not expect that Xiaofan could kick him away with a simple kick. This was enough to prove that this guy's strength was already above him. What should I do now? Were they supposed to just watch as he stole all the materials? Will all my hard work in the past few days be in vain? A trace of haze flashed in Situ Haotian's eyes. Impossible. Even if your strength is superior, so what? Today I came prepared. I must make you kneel at my feet and cry and admit your mistake. I haven't seen her yet. Tang Tang shook her head, pointed to the outside and said, "I'm also waiting for Situ Chitian to release Cheng Menjing. He promised me that as long as I can bring back the purple mist lotus, he will let me and Cheng Menjing regain our freedom. But then he said that he would wait until they finished their business. How about, you catch him and ask him?" Tang Tang stayed in the wooden house to wait for Cheng Menjing. She did not expect that before Miss Tang came, Xiaofan came. Naturally, Xiaofan did not want to wait, so he nodded and was about to go out to find Situ Chitian. As a result, this guy ran in happily and shouted as he ran, "Godfather! Godfather Haotian! Fantasy Dust Pavilion is finished. Their sect leader and ancestral master were dead. From now on, the cultivation world will be our world. Situ Chitian had been pushed to the ground by Xiaofan earlier. After he got up with great difficulty, he was about to rush into the wooden hut when he was startled by Fu Qinghao, who had been sent flying. Then, he saw the scene of Fu Qinghao crashing into the bronze cauldron. Seeing that fantasy dust pavilion was in a mess, Situ Chitian simply did not enter the door. He stayed outside the door and observed for a while. It was not until he saw the other party leave in a hurry that he ran in happily to report the news. "Whirled my ass." Xiaofan interrupted Situ Chitian's good news, narrowed his eyes and said, "What did you just shout?" "He is your godfather." "So, he is Situ Haotian, right?" Situ Chitian could not help but be shocked when he saw Xiaofan standing in front of him. He subconsciously took a step back, but suddenly realized why he should step back. Just as he was about to muster the courage to refute, he was interrupted by Xiaofan again. "I don't care how messy your private lives are, and I don't care if you are godfather, godson, or godfather." Xiaofan looked at Situ Chitian coldly and said, "In short, you better release Cheng Menjing and hand over all the medicinal powder made from the purple mist lotus. Then, I might consider letting you live." As soon as he finished speaking, Xiaofan suddenly seemed to sense something. His gaze turned to the female primordial spirit in the middle of the room, inside the crystal shield. Although he could not see her face clearly, he could clearly feel that she was also looking at him coldly. Xiaofan's heart skipped a beat, and a thought suddenly appeared in his mind: this fellow should be the mastermind behind all this. It was also because she needed the purple mist lotus to shape her body. Otherwise, with the intelligence of two idiots, Situ Chitian and Situ Haotian, it was impossible for them to create such a sophisticated electronic device. Chapter 1528. Humph. Xiaofan, for you to be able to come to this place, you are amazing, but your ability is limited to this. Situ Haotian coldly snorted, secretly winking at his subordinates behind him, and then fiercely said, "I want to see what kind of ability you have to take away the purple mist black lotus from my hands." "Oh, since you are so kind to invite me, then I will dig out your eyeballs and take a good look." As soon as Xiaofan's voice fell, a thick true qi suddenly appeared, gradually covering his entire body. In the next moment, Xiaofan revealed his cultivation at the peak of the sea-splitting stage. Although it looked calm on the surface, it was actually a violent and unrestrained pressure. It was released from Xiaofan's body and heavily surrounded Situ Haotian and Situ Chitian. Cough, cough. Situ Chitian's strength was the weakest, and as soon as he was suppressed by Xiaofan's coercion, he immediately felt as if his neck was being strangled by a pair of invisible hands. His face revealed a horrified expression, and his legs softened as he fell to the ground, involuntarily coughing. Situ Haotian's breathing also stagnated, and his expression was very ugly, but he still waved his hand with difficulty, and then took a deep breath, and shouted towards Xiaofan, who was approaching step by step, "Xiaofan, you stop. If you dare to take another step, don't ever think of seeing your mother again." "My mother? She is in your hands?" Xiaofan had thought that Situ Haotian would beg for mercy, and would even curse, but he never thought that he would say such a sentence, and could not help but be stunned. The corner of Situ Haotian's mouth carried a trace of an evil smile as he pointed behind Xiaofan. Xiaofan turned his head to look and saw a few staff members dressed in white strenuously carrying out a transparent box from the side door of the wooden house. Inside the box lay a beautiful young woman whose eyes were tightly shut and who seemed to be unconscious. Although Xiaofan's mother had disappeared when he was very young, and he had not seen her for a long time, but the moment he saw the beautiful young woman, Xiaofan immediately judged that this must be his closest relative. However, the beautiful young woman was in a deep coma at this time, and could not feel the outside world. "What did you do to her?" Xiaofan was really angry this time. He did not think that his mother, who he thought was missing, was actually kidnapped by Situ Haotian, and this had already touched his bottom line. "Hey, how is it, are you afraid?" Situ Hautian felt proud and elated. He proudly walked to the side of the transparent box, patted the surface of the box and said, "Right now your mother has only fainted. She is still safe and sound, but the best part is yet to come." Xiaofan tightly clenched his fists, and silently stared at Situ Hautian. If looks could kill, Situ Hautian would have been cut into pieces by now. Ignoring Xiaofan's murderous glare, Situ Hautian calmly took out a remote control from his bosom and waved it in his hand. He sneered coldly and said, "Do you see the red button on it? As long as I gently press it, the celestial device containing your mother will explode with a bang. Do you want to try and see whether your body is faster, or my fingers are faster?" Xiaofan. "You, don't be impulsive, that bastard is shameless, and he will certainly do what he said." Tang Tang's complexion changed, and she quickly pulled Xiaofan to appease him, although the purple nefarious lotus has been harvested by me, it won't take long for it to grow again. When that time comes, we can go in and harvest again. There is no need to take this risk, and please don't hurt Auntie. Tang Tang's voice was a little choked, and she felt very guilty. When she was harvesting, why didn't she leave some? Why did she insist on taking all the purple nefarious lotus back? She did not expect that Xiaofan would be tricked. Feeling Tang Tang's guilt, Xiaofan gently patted her cold little hand, indicating that it was not her fault, and that she did not need to bear the responsibility. "Ha ha ha. Little girl, you are too naive." Situ Hautian suddenly looked up to the sky and laughed, and said with a proud face, "Let me kindly remind you that the purple nefarious lotus growth cycle is as long as tens of thousands of years, and this thing seed is in the stamen. You have already taken all of them out, and it is impossible to grow new ones. You should give up as soon as possible." At this time, Situ Hautian was very relaxed. In his opinion, as long as Xiaofan's mother was still in his hands, it was equal to holding a crucial bargaining chip in the confrontation between the two armies, and Xiaofan would certainly not dare to act rashly. When he successfully molded the body, and then let Queen Luan obtain a new body, she would certainly be able to easily kill Xiaofan. "Oh, it is impolite not to reciprocate. Since you have given me such a kind reminder, then I will also give you some useful advice." Xiaofan looked at Situ Hautian coldly and said, "What else can you suggest?" Situ Hautian glanced at Xiaofan contemptuously, thinking that he was struggling on his deathbed. Xiaofan raised his right hand in the air, gently snapped his fingers, and then said with a blank expression, "I suggest you enjoy the feeling of touching things with your fingers, because from now on, you will never experience it again." "What the hell?" Situ Hautian was slightly stunned, completely unable to understand what Xiaofan meant by these words. He thought that Xiaofan must be bluffing, so he snorted very disdainfully, not taking it to heart at all. "Idiot! Be careful behind you. Godfather! There is a sword behind you, get out of the way." Just as Situ Hautian was planning to humiliate Xiaofan, Miss Luan's angry voice and Situ Chitian's anxious urging voice sounded at the same time. From their point of view, they could clearly see that a sharp sword suddenly appeared behind Situ Hautian, and the hilt of the sword was also emitting a black fog, which gradually formed the shape of a hand, tightly gripping the sword, and fiercely chopped down at Situ Hautian's arm. However, the two's warning was a step too late. Although Situ Hautian heard their shouts, and his heart was alarmed, his body did not have time to react before he heard a burst of sound. Only to hear a "kacha" sound, Situ Hautian's right hand, which was holding the remote control, was instantly cut off at the shoulder. His cheek was also dyed red by the blood that gushed out, and a piercing pain shot from his shoulder to his head. "Ah!" Situ Hautian could not help but scream, his left hand clutching his right shoulder that revealed the white bone, powerlessly kneeling on the ground. Fortunately, although he was tortured by the pain, he still remembered to use Yuan Qi to seal the artery in his right shoulder, so as not to lose too much blood and die. Chapter 1529. Turning his head with difficulty, Situ Hautian finally saw the culprit. It turned out that he had been struck from behind by a strange black mist wielding a sharp sword. At this moment, this thing had an evil smile on its face as it swayed back and forth in the air. It didn't look like a primordial spirit, but more like a ghost. "And little demon, keep an eye on this idiot. If any one of them dares to touch that remote control, you know what to do," Xiaofan instructed indifferently. Then, he gave little demon a look that said, "You know what I mean. Just wait and see. I promise to kill one if they come. If two come, I'll kill a pair." And Xiaoma cackled. He raised his flying sword and stood between Situ Haotian and the crystal coffin, glaring at the others present. Seeing that Xiaoma had understood his meaning, Xiaofan nodded and turned to walk in the direction of the electronic instrument. Because he saw that the purple mist lotus powder had begun to dissolve and was slowly being synthesized, he wanted to snatch the material back as soon as possible. "Stop right there." Miss Luan was also anxious and screamed in a sharp voice. As soon as the voice fell, Miss Luan's spirit began to emit a faint white light. The spirit that looked illusory and faintly transparent began to condense, gradually growing hands and feet, and the face became clear. Gradually, it became an existence that was infinitely close to a physical existence. Xiaofan first glanced at the LCD screen and found that this thing had an extremely complicated operation interface. He estimated that he would not be able to deal with this thing for a while, so he simply turned his head and stared coldly at the crystal shield. "I almost forgot that there is still you." Xiaofan looked at Miss Luan's petite body that was gradually taking shape and threatened in a deep voice, "If you don't want to disappear like that primordial spirit in the fantasy dust pavilion earlier, you better tell me how to operate this device immediately. Otherwise, I'll smash your crystal barrier into a pile of broken glass." "Ridiculous, do you think I really need this crystal shield?" Miss Luan sneered, clenched her fist and waved it gently, directly punching a hole in the crystal shield in front of her. Then her body turned into mist again and floated out of the hole. Xiaofan's brows furrowed slightly. This female essence soul seemed to be a little more powerful than the one in the fantasy dust pavilion previously. Although he looked thin and small, he was able to break the barrier with just a light punch. His strength was not to be underestimated. Hiss. "She is." As Xiaofan was observing Miss Luan, Elder Heaven Ancestor suddenly let out a gasp. "What's wrong, Elder Heaven Ancestor? Do you know her?" Xiaofan raised his eyebrows. He felt that the Elder Heaven Ancestor's reaction was a little strange. He had never seen him like this before. "Oh. I do." The Elder Heaven Ancestor was silent for a while, then said bitterly, "And it's not a small grudge. I was beaten into a primordial spirit state by her, and ended up in the mortal world." "What?" Xiaofan was shocked. He did not expect that this ordinary, thin woman was the enemy of the Elder Heaven Ancestor. "At that time, I should have seriously injured her, but I don't know how she turned into a primordial spirit state." The Elder Heaven Ancestor paused, then added, "But her strength is indeed very strong. I have no way to determine her current cultivation, you must be careful." Before Xiaofan had time to answer, Miss Luan was already in front of him. She said coldly, "My primordial spirit is much stronger than you think. How can that ant from the fantasy dust pavilion compare to me? I don't need the protection of the container at all. Staying in there is only to recover my vitality and strengthen my primordial spirit body. In that case, I would like to feel how powerful your primordial spirit is." Xiaofan could not be bothered to talk to the Elder Heaven Ancestor anymore. He shouted angrily, tiptoed lightly on the ground, and leaped into the air. He condensed a cyclone in his right palm, and fiercely pushed it towards Miss Luan's primordial spirit. "Hee, you are Xiaofan, right? I've heard of your name for a long time." Miss Luan smiled faintly. She did not dodge until Xiaofan's palm wind was in front of her. Suddenly, her body turned into mist again, and she easily dodged the palm wind. Without waiting for Xiaofan to change his move, Miss Luan's body flashed, and she floated behind him. She instantly condensed into a solid body, and quickly kicked him. She said coldly, I really did not expect you to come here, but this is the end. Die. Boom. Xiao Chen's palm strike shattered the crystal shield into pieces, but at the same time, he was kicked down from the air by Miss Luan, and a large pit was formed on the ground. The whole wooden house was suddenly filled with dust, blocking everyone's vision. Xiao Chen. Upon seeing this, Tang Tang was very nervous and hurriedly shouted. She was about to run to check on Xiao Chen's condition, but she vaguely saw a figure suddenly flashed out of the big pit and rushed towards Miss Luan like a lightning bolt, fighting with her again. Tang Tang had just breathed a sigh of relief, but her expression changed again. The current situation was obviously very unfavorable for Xiao Chen. Every time he wanted to attack, Miss Luan would directly turn into mist, causing all his moves to fail. Then, she would take advantage of the time when his moves were exhausted to condense into a solid body again to attack him. Xiao Chen had never encountered such a situation. After a few rounds, he had a lot of wounds on his body, and his movements were not as fast as before. He was somewhat unable to cope with it, and he gradually showed signs of declining. The more Tang Tang watched, the more anxious she became. She was racking her brains to think of a way to help Xiao Chen deal with Miss Luan when she suddenly heard footsteps approaching from outside the door. Tang Tang thought that it was the reinforcements of the Heaven-Earth Association that had been left outside, and immediately became very nervous. She immediately assumed an offensive posture, intending to kill the person who had come, and then find a way to join forces with Xiao Chen to kill Miss Luan. Huh? Tang Tang. Why are you here? As soon as Hongzhu stepped into the wooden house, he saw Tang Tang standing solemnly there, glaring at him with a murderous look. He could not help but blurt out in astonishment. Hongzhu? Why are you here? Tang Tang was about to launch her attack, but when she saw that the person who had come turned out to be Hongzhu, she hastily withdrew her attack and asked in a very surprised manner. I'm going to ask you. What are you doing here? Could it be? When Hongzhu saw Tang Tang's posture, his expression immediately became strange. Could it be that she was in cahoots with Situ Chitian? Seeing Hongzhu's suspicious eyes, Tang Tang immediately understood that he had misunderstood her identity. She quickly explained, Hongzhu, you think too much. I was also captured by them. This is all Situ Chitian and Situ Haotian's plot. They first captured Cheng Menjiang, and then used her to threaten me, forcing me to collect the purple mist black lotus. So, I had no choice but to do it. Chapter 1530. Really? Then. Hongzhu narrowed his eyes and did not quite believe what Tang Tang said. When he was about to continue asking, Nye Xiaoyu, who had just entered the door behind him, quickly said, Tang Tang didn't lie, Sister Hongzhu. I was also locked up with Miss Cheng Menjiang before. They also forced me to pick the purple mist black lotus, but I didn't succeed. Tang Tang nodded again and cast a grateful look at Nye Xiaoyu and Li Xiener next to her. I'm sorry, Tang Tang. It seems that I thought too much. Hongzhu smiled awkwardly and apologized with a bit of embarrassment. It doesn't matter. Let's not talk about this first. Xiao Chen is still. Tang Tang waved her hand. Before she could finish her words, a muffled bang was heard. Then, Xiao Chen's body flew out through the big hole that Fu Chenghao had just smashed. Miss Luan also turned into mist again and chased him out of the house. What the hell is that? How dare she hit my husband, Xiao Chen? Seeing that Xiao Chen was actually beaten, Hongzhu was so angry that his temples throbbed and he felt that his blood vessels were about to burst. He immediately waved to Tang Tang and the other women and angrily said, Sisters, Xiao Chen's husband is being bullied. We can't just ignore it. Everyone, come with me. Let's join hands and destroy this thing that's neither human nor ghost. We won't stop until she's dead. Hongzhu, don't be impulsive. Tang Tang quickly pulled Hongzhu's hand and said with a solemn expression, even Xiao Chen is not her match. If we rush forward, not only will we not be of any help, but it will also easily distract Xiaochen. Let's not go and make trouble. This. Hongzhu gritted his teeth with some reluctance and stared at the scene of the two people fighting outside, but he did not say anything more. After calming down and thinking about it, Hongzhu also understood that Tang Tang's words did have some truth to them. It was him who was too hot-blooded. But when he saw Xiaochen being beaten to the ground by the female ghost again and again, and he couldn't give any help, Hongzhu's heart was filled with mixed feelings, and his mood was extremely complicated. On one hand, he was constantly cursing that hateful female soul in his heart, but on the other hand, he felt a deep sense of self-blame. Hongzhu was now very regretful. Why had he been so playful and lazy before, only thinking about being intimate with Xiaochen, instead of improving his own abilities and working hard to become stronger? After being kicked by Miss Luan again, Xiaochen's body smashed into a tree trunk and he spat out a mouthful of blood. After being kicked several times in a row, Xiaochen had realized that Miss Luan had not shown her real strength, but had been using ordinary punches and kicks to tease him, just like a cat playing with a mouse. She would play with him first, and when she was done playing with him, she would use her big move to kill him in one fell swoop. Wiping the blood from the corner of his mouth, Xiaochen did not launch another attack, but first circulated his yuan qi to check his body. He found that there were no other problems for the time being, except for a few bruises on the surface of his body and some slight damage to his internal organs. Staring at Miss Luan, who was leisurely and contented not far away, Xiaochen asked in his spiritual sea with a bitter face, "Elder Heaven Ancestor, this is not the way to go. Sooner or later, I will be beaten to death by her. Since you have fought with her, do you know if she has any weaknesses? Do you have a suitable idea to deal with her? It would be best if you could directly blast her to pieces." "If I could blast her to pieces, would I still need to stay in your spiritual sea, waiting for my body to be reconstructed?" Elder Tian reprimanded in a bad mood, "You only know how to daydream in broad daylight. It's obvious that you're not strong enough, yet you're still thinking of killing others in an instant. I can't even see through her cultivation, so how could I see through her weakness? Then what should I do?" Xiaochen frowned and lamented, "This old woman is too ruthless. I can't hit her, and I can't dodge her either. I'm completely countered by her. There's nothing I can do." Elder Heaven Ancestor pondered for a while, then suddenly gave a suggestion, "Why don't you try to use the 9 nether flame to burn her? Since she is now in her nascent soul state, she should be very afraid of the unusual flame. Nethery, I will go to distract her. You find a chance to attack her." Xiaochen made a prompt decision, quickly ordering in his spiritual sea. Then, his feet stomped on the ground, and his speed suddenly skyrocketed. Like a ferocious cheetah, he dashed toward Miss Luan. In the process of dashing, Xiaochen's left hand quietly threw out a wisp of flame, and the cyclone in his right hand instantly became stronger, fiercely smashing toward Miss Luan's face. "Ha ha ha, are you too stupid or too naive? Don't you realize that your attack can't hit me?" Miss Luan saw that Xiaochen was actually using the same trick, and the corner of her mouth curved into a disdainful smile. Lady Luan's figure gradually became blurry. Just as Xiaochen's fist wind was about to touch her face, she turned into mist with a "hoo" sound and floated in the air like an illusion. Xiaochen's fist immediately hit empty air. Luckily, he usually trained, so his body's balance was excellent, and he did not fall because of the inertia of rushing forward. However, when he adjusted his center of gravity, he keenly felt a faint murderous aura quickly approaching. "You are really too weak. This queen is too lazy to continue wasting time with you. Go to hell, Xiaochen." Miss Luan, who had turned into a mist, suddenly appeared on the left side of Xiaochen. She quickly condensed her nascent soul, preparing to turn into a solid body and kill Xiaochen in one blow. However, when he repeated the same trick this time, before Miss Luan could completely condense into a solid form, a ball of bluish-purple flame suddenly appeared in front of Xiaochen out of thin air and quickly flew towards her. Miss Luan's slightly illusory face suddenly changed, and she was very surprised, blurting out, "This is 9 nether flame? Ah!" There was only a scream, and before Miss Luan could dodge, the bluish-purple flame quickly cut through her arm that had not yet condensed. After a faint sizzling sound, a disgusting smell quickly spread in the air. It smelled like a rotting animal corpse that had been burnt. It was extremely stinky. It really is the 9 nether flame. Looking at her right arm that was burned, Miss Luan could not help but burn with anger. She stared at Xiaochen and said fiercely, "I didn't expect you to be able to subdue such a good treasure. It is simply a reckless waste of God's gift. Stop talking nonsense, quickly release Cheng Menjing. Otherwise, I will let the 9 nether flame burn you, old woman, for 3 days and 3 nights, until there is nothing left of you." Xiaochen saw that the 9 nether flame was really effective, and his spirit was lifted, immediately retorting. Miss Luan was suddenly so angry that her nose was crooked, but when she heard Xiaochen mention Cheng Menjing, she rolled her eyes and let out a pretentious laugh. "Do you think you are great because you have the 9 nether flame? This queen has a way to get rid of you effortlessly." Chapter 1531. Xiaochen frowned slightly. Before he could say anything, Miss Luan materialized. She waved her hand and said coldly, "Turn around and take a look. These are the people you have been thinking about day and night." Xiaochen subconsciously turned around and saw more than 10 people suddenly emerge from the bushes not far away. From their dull expressions and empty eyes, these people should all be biohumans. One of the biohumans was holding a chain in his hand. On the other end of the chain was Cheng Menjing, who was tied up by a rope magic tool. However, at this time, her mouth had been sealed with tape, so she could not speak at all. Cheng Menjing obviously wanted to say something to Xiaochen urgently. However, no matter how hard she tried, she could only make whimpering sounds. She could not say anything. "Young mistress!" Xiaochen shouted. He clenched his fists tightly and rushed forward with large strides. Just as he was about to save Cheng Menjing, he saw that she revealed an extremely anxious expression. Her gaze kept drifting over to the reincarnated incarnate. Xiaochen followed Cheng Menjing's gaze and looked at the biohuman in surprise. Suddenly, his body trembled. This biohuman holding the chain, isn't he Cheng Menjing's uncle, Cheng Zhongqian? At this time, Cheng Zhongqian's expression was stiff. He held the chain tightly as if he did not recognize Cheng Menjing at all. In the past, he used to like this niece of his the most. Looking at Cheng Menjing's pained and helpless expression, Xiaochen's gaze became a little sour. He moved his eyes away with difficulty and looked at the side of Cheng Zhongqian. That familiar face. Isn't that my father, Xiaofan? Dad? Xiaochen called out, but there was no response. Xiaofeng's expression was the same as Cheng Zhongqian's, cold and indifferent. He did not respond to Xiaochen's call at all. Looking at his unconscious father standing in front of him, and then thinking of his mother who was unconscious in the crystal box in the wooden house, Xiaochen felt as if thousands of ants were gnawing at his heart. Guilt and discomfort tormented his soul. He had finally found his parents, but Xiaochen did not feel happy at all. If he had found the clues earlier and found them earlier, would they have suffered less pain? Dad! Mom! Just as Xiaochen's heart was in turmoil, a sorrowful cry suddenly came from the direction of the wooden house. Tang Tang stumbled out of the wooden house and ran in the direction of the cyborgs. As she ran, she shouted, "Mom, Dad, what's wrong with you? Wake up! I'm your daughter, Tang Tang." It turned out that among the cyborgs, other than Xiaofeng and Cheng Zhongqian, Tang Tang's parents were also among them. However, their expressions were lifeless and they did not respond to Tang Tang's call. Tang Tang was so anxious that tears streamed down her face. However, no matter how she shouted, she could not wake up her biological parents. Hearing Tang Tang's shout, Xiaochen immediately woke up. He remembered that he was still in the middle of a battle. Immediately, his body tensed up and he was ready to fight. He glanced in the direction of the cyborgs again and was shocked to find that almost all of them had the strength of the first level of the sea-splitting stage. Xiaochun could not help but be shocked. He did not expect Miss Luan to be so powerful. Even these cyborgs without self-consciousness could be raised to the sea-splitting stage. If these people were placed in the world of immortal cultivation, wouldn't it cause a huge earthquake? You are responsible for watching over Cheng Menjing. The rest of you, attack together. Kill Xiao Chen and those girls. Miss Luan enjoyed the chaotic scene of Xiao Chen and the others for a while. Then, she maintained her physical form and floated in the air leisurely. She gave a few simple orders to the cyborgs and coldly watched the upcoming show with her arms crossed. The cyborgs received the orders and immediately took action. They pounced on Xiao Chen and the others. Dad, Mom. Do you recognize me? Hurry up and come over. Seeing that the cyborgs were moving, Tang Tang immediately went forward and prepared to rescue her parents. Seeing this, Xiao Chen's heart sank. He immediately used his movement technique and flashed to Tang Tang's side. He grabbed her waist and quickly left in the direction of the wooden house. However, because of the haste, one of the cyborgs slapped him hard on the back. Tang Tang, be careful. They have been injected with the drug by that she-devil. They are now cyborgs. They can't hear anything you say. Xiao Chen endured the pain coming from his back and shouted at Tang Tang. Why are you stopping me? Think of a way to save them. They are my parents. Tang Tang cried and shouted anxiously. She constantly struggled and hit Xiao Chen. She wanted to break free and rush to find her parents. However, she was still held tightly by Xiao Chen. She could not move even half a step forward. Xiao Chen quickly brought Tang Tang to Hongzhu. Then, he held her shoulders and shook her hard. He shouted, Tang Tang, don't be silly. Their brains have been controlled by the drug. They have no self-consciousness at all, just like you when you became a cyborgs. Do you want to go and die? They will really kill you. Hearing Xiao Chen's words, Tang Tang looked at her parents' lifeless eyes. She could not help but feel a lump in her throat and burst into tears again. In fact, she understood the reason. It was just that she could not suppress her excitement after seeing her parents who had been missing for a long time. That was why she had done such a reckless thing. Hongzhu, take Tang Tang and Nia Xiaoyu to a safe place. The farther, the better. Xiao Chen was also very sad. However, he still gently pushed Tang Tang and sent her to Hongzhu's side. Then, he solemnly warned her. Yes, I understand. My husband, Xiao Chen, be careful. Hongzhu nodded sensibly. He immediately pulled Tang Tang and the other two women, turned around, and ran in the direction of the forest. Although he did not know where the safe place was, he could only take it one step at a time. Hongzhu's first judgment was to get as far away from that female spirit as possible. TSK, I really didn't expect this. Xiao Chen, you're actually an infatuated man. Young Lady Luan pretended to clap her hands softly and a cruel smile appeared on the corner of her mouth. Since you have the guts to face all of this alone, I would like to see if you dare to lay your hands on your own family for the sake of those women. After saying that, Miss Luan gestured to the cyborgs on the ground and rearranged their attack methods. Then, she casually dodged the attack of the fire of the underworld. After receiving the order, Cheng Zhongqian handed the chain that bound Cheng Menjing to another cyborgs. Then, together with Xiaofan and Tang Tang's parents, the four of them rushed toward Xiao Chen. Chapter 1532. Xiao Chen clenched his teeth. Looking at the four biohumans who were in a daze, he slowly lowered his raised fist. These people were the people they were most familiar with and closest to. He didn't expect Miss Luan to be so vicious that she would use such a sinister trick. The only thing that Xiao Chen was glad about was that the strength of the four biohumans was not too high. With his cultivation at the peak of the sea-splitting stage, even if he didn't fight back, he could easily dodge their attacks. Although he was occasionally grazed by the wind from their palms, Xiaofan didn't think it was a big deal. As long as it wasn't enough to kill him, it didn't matter. The most important thing now was to find a way to wake the biohumans up or stop their attacks so that they would lose their combat power. Ha ha ha. Xiaofan, I didn't expect you to have such a day. Situ Qitian, who had bandaged Situ Haotian's arm, happened to run out of the wooden house at this time. After seeing this scene, he laughed proudly and said, "You must feel great being chased by your father all over the street, right? I will remember this scene for the rest of my life." After watching for a while with his legs shaking, Situ Qitian realized that Xiaofan was still able to dodge left and right while being surrounded by 4 people. He was rarely at a disadvantage. He felt a little displeased, so he pointed at the other biohumans who were standing still and instructed, "You guys, don't just stand there. Hurry up and take care of Xiaofan together. Beat him until he's dead." The biohumans also obeyed Situ Qitian's orders. Except for the biohuman who was guarding Cheng Menjiang, the others immediately joined the battle after receiving the order. Xiaofan, who was originally quite relaxed, was suddenly under a lot more pressure. Although these biohumans had no consciousness, they still had the fighting instinct, and they were very flexible. Every time Xiaofan was about to make a move, Xiaofeng, Cheng Zhongfan, and Tang Tang's parents would take the initiative to rush in front of him. Left with no choice, Xiaofan could only withdraw his attack. However, just as he was about to unleash his new attack, the other biohumans would rush forward and attack him together with Xiaofeng and the others. In a moment of carelessness, Xiaofan suffered a few palm strikes in succession, yet he didn't dare to retaliate, causing Situ Qitian, who was watching from nearby, to be overjoyed. He danced with joy and roared with laughter as he pointed at Xiaofan and ridiculed without the slightest scruple. "Xiaofan, Xiaofan, you've been looking for a father for so long, yet you didn't expect that your father would beat you up the moment he saw you, right? It means that as a son, you are too unfilial. Motherf *****. Situ Qitian, you're having a good time, aren't you?" Xiaofan finally couldn't take it anymore. Although his internal organs felt like they were churning, he still gritted his teeth and released his mental strength, instantly controlling Situ Haotian, who had lost too much blood and was already a little fuzzy in the wooden house. Situ Haotian's expression froze, and then he picked up the flying sword with his left hand that was still intact. He quietly snuck out of the house, came behind Situ Haotian, raised the flying sword, and slashed down hard. Situ Qitian was watching excitedly as Xiaofan was beaten up. Suddenly, there was a burst of wind behind his ear, and he immediately realized that the situation was not good. Alarm bells went off in his heart, and he quickly lay down on the ground and rolled like a lazy donkey, trying to avoid the attack coming from behind. However, Situ Qitian's dodging action was still a little too late. Although he rolled on the ground, his calf was still cut by the flying sword, and there was a deep wound, causing him to grimace in pain. Situ Qitian turned around to see who was attacking him, and when he saw who it was, he immediately cursed angrily, "Godfather, why did you cut me? Are you ****king crazy?" Situ Haotian's eyes were empty and his expression sluggish. He simply ignored his godson's curses and continued to chase after Situ Qitian with his flying sword, slashing at him without any pattern. Ouch! Situ Qitian was caught off guard and was slashed a few more times. For a moment, he screamed and hurriedly dodged around with his hands on his head. He even grabbed his unrelated subordinates and used them as shields to defend against his godfather's attacks. Xiaofan sneered and said sarcastically to the panicking Situ Qitian, "How is it? Situ Qitian, the feeling of being chased by your father and slashing at the streets must be very satisfying, right? It shows that you haven't served me well enough." Situ Qitian, who was covering his head and scurrying like a rat, had no time to answer. The attack of the biohumans came at Xiaofan again. After dodging the wind generated by Xiaofeng's fists, Xiaochen was slapped twice by Tang Tang's parents. Before he could recover, Xiaofan and Cheng Zhongqian's fists came at him again. Xiaochen couldn't dodge in time and was hit again, and was directly sent flying. When he was about to fall to the ground, Xiaochen took the opportunity to stretch out his right palm and support himself on the ground. He took advantage of the momentum and rolled 1.5 times on the ground before he managed to offset the impact. In the end, just as he steadied his feet, the three biohumans once again ran towards Xiaochen. Xiaofan, who was in the lead, acted as if he had a deep grudge against his own son. He mercilessly kicked Xiaochen, while the other two took the opportunity to swing their fists. It seemed as if they were determined to kill Xiaochen. What the f***ck? Dad, you're too good at using this combination of skills. You're not leaving your son a chance to live at all. Xiaochen smiled helplessly and barely dodged the joint attack of the three people. He took the opportunity to glance at the situation of the flame of the underworld from the corner of his eye, wanting to know how the battle was going on over there. In the end, it would have been fine if Xiaochen had not taken a look, but when he did, he nearly vomited a mouthful of blood. Just now, Xiaochen had already noticed that when Miss Luan turned into a solid body, no matter how the flame of the underworld attacked, it could not cause any substantial damage to her. Only when she turned into a primordial spirit could the flame of the underworld have a chance to burn her. Originally, Xiaochen hoped that the flame of the underworld could take the opportunity to attack when Miss Luan wanted to change her position and turn into a mist. He did not expect that Miss Luan would not give it a chance at all. She had been standing steadily on the side in her solid state, watching the battle on Xiaochen's side with interest. The flame of the underworld was carrying out futile attacks on Miss Luan on the side. It either created a large number of clones to sweep over, or it directly rushed at her aggressively. However, no matter how it attacked, it had no effect. It looked like an ant trying to shake a tree. He, Xiaochen, it seems that you usually do not train this little thing well. Seeing that Xiaochen was looking at her, Miss Luan sneered and said, "Such a boring attack, I am too lazy to even dodge. Why don't you let it save its strength? Nethery. Think of some other way to deal with her." Xiaochen shouted helplessly, "Your physical attack is useless against her. You have to find a way to turn her into a primordial spirit." F***ck. Chapter 1533. Thick smoke billowed from the blasted blackened land. Some broken human limbs fell from the sky and scattered around the big pit, emitting an unpleasant burnt smell. The whole scene was as horrible as the end of the world. This time, an little demon was dumbfounded. If she broke free, she would hurt the two people who grabbed the sword. But if she didn't let go, she would lose her fighting power and couldn't help Xiaochen. "Don't move, an little demon. Don't hurt them." When Xiaochen saw this, he immediately endured the pain and roared. If her parents were hurt, she would be sad for the rest of her life. A breeze gently swept across the lake, gradually blowing away the smoke caused by the explosion. A figure slowly emerged from the dust. Not knowing whether it was because the power of the explosion was too strong, or the sound wave temporarily deafened people, no one around the wooden house spoke for a long time. Xiaochen lay on the ground, staring at the explosion. For a moment, he couldn't react. This voice seemed a little familiar. "Little Nethery, stop. Don't worry about me. Continue to fight with that spirit until you destroy her." Xiaochen couldn't stand up for a moment. He looked at the flame of the underworld approaching quickly with his eyes wide open. He was burning with anxiety and shouted at the top of his voice. "Really, what the hell is this place? There isn't even an exit." After a while, a soft and neutral voice suddenly came from the center of the explosion. Just as Xiaochen was distracted to teach the flame of the underworld a lesson, more than a dozen biohumans surrounded him again and launched a new round of fighting, overwhelming punches and kicks. Those biohumans who were standing beside Xiaochen all swarmed toward Xiaochen at this time, with murderous looks on their faces. It was obvious that they were going to kill him. However, the flame of the underworld could not listen to Xiao Chen's orders at this time. It shot over and gradually fell in midair. The huge fireball was still expanding outward, and even the surrounding air was affected. The temperature sometimes soared, and sometimes plummeted. It could be seen that it had completely thrown caution to the wind. It was determined to burn itself to save Xiao Chen's life. Are you Xiaochuan? Xiao Chen climbed up with great difficulty and looked at the guy in front of him. His clothes were torn by the explosion, and his face was covered with a layer of ash. He couldn't see anything. He could only vaguely tell from the familiar voice and way of speaking that this guy was probably Xiaochuan. With that thought in mind, the hellfire of the underworld immediately recalled all of his clones and instantly condensed them into a huge bluish-purple fireball. With a whistling sound, he turned around and smashed the biohumans that were swarming toward him on the ground. If I wasn't smart, I'm afraid I'd be trapped in this valley for the rest of my life. If that's the case, I won't be able to see Xiao Chen Appa anymore. Xiao Chen Appa is so mighty and strong, I can't hog him for myself, or else little sister Tang Tang will definitely kill me. Sigh, what a pity. Infatuated Xiao Chen, the game of cat and mouse is over. I'd like to see who can save you this time. Seeing that the flying sword was also controlled, Miss Luan waved her hand decisively and shouted coldly. Boom! A huge explosion rang out, and a sound wave swept up a ferocious shockwave and spread out. For a moment, sand, stones, and smoke filled the air. Dust and gravel filled the air, and a huge pit was blasted open on the ground. Yes, I'm little Yaya. The newcomer stomped her feet lightly and pouted coquettishly, Xiao Chen Appa, you're so naughty. How could you forget my looks? Master, I'm here to save you. Seeing the situation on Xiao Chen's side, and Xiaoma immediately broke free from Situ Haotian's left hand, controlled the flying sword to rush over, and directly swung the sword to cut off the heads of several biohumans. The figure's toes gently touched the ground, and he jumped out of the big pit caused by the explosion. His toes touched the lake again, and his body flew into the air again. The hellfire of the underworld was still around Miss Luan, but after seeing this scene, he couldn't care less. His main duty was to protect his master, Xiao Chen. Now that his master was in trouble, even if he had to sacrifice his own life, even if he had to kill his family, he must help him out. However, when he was about to continue to kill, he found that the two biohumans in front of him were the parents that Tang Tang had just called for. He suddenly stopped and couldn't kill them. Although Yu Xiaochuan looked a little angry, he felt sweet in his heart at this time. After all, since he entered the world of cultivation, he had been looking for Xiao Chen's whereabouts. Now that his wish had finally come true, he was naturally happy. But this time, Xiao Chen was not so lucky. In the case of multitasking, he had no time to dodge. He was hit several times in a row, and even his protective primordial chi was broken. He took a few steps back, and his legs went soft. He knelt on the ground, opened his mouth, and spat out a mouthful of blood. And Xiaoma was still thinking about how to bypass them and cut other biohumans. Unexpectedly, Tang Tang's parents suddenly reached out their hands and grabbed the flying sword directly. Xiao Chen Appa. What a coincidence to meet you here. You don't know, I've been looking for you so anxiously. Landing lightly beside Xiao Chen, the person looked at Xiao Chen's face excitedly, but it didn't take long for his eyebrows to furrow, and said with a little anger, Xiao Chen Appa, how did you get hurt? Who beat you up like this? Hurry up and tell them, I'll avenge you and kill them all. Because Xiao Chen was injured, he could no longer control Situ Haotian with his mind. Situ Haotian finally regained his consciousness, but he had exhausted his energy. He collapsed to the ground involuntarily, foaming at the corner of his mouth, and fainted. Xiao Chen naturally understood the intention of the flame of the underworld, but he couldn't watch his father be killed in front of him. What's more, among these biohumans were Cheng Menjing's uncle and Tang Tang's parents. he couldn't bear such a heavy sin. Instead of letting the flame of the underworld kill them, it was better to be killed himself. The figure floating in the air swept the surroundings with his extremely sharp eyes. Suddenly, as if he had discovered a new continent, his pupils burst with a burst of extraordinary splendor. In an instant, he displayed an inconceivably enchanting movement technique and rushed towards his destination like a graceful swallow. On the other side, Situ Chitian had been cut by his godfather's flying sword to the point of dying. He lay on the ground unconscious with his eyes rolled, and twitched from time to time. Chapter 1534. Can't you speak normally? Furthermore, your face is covered in dust and black as ink. Who would be able to tell who you are? Xiao Chun could not help but roll his eyes as he grumpily said. He was about to ask Yu Xiaochuan how he suddenly appeared in the teleportation point when he saw Yu Xiaochuan take out a small mirror from nowhere and look at his face. Then, he let out a cry of surprise, turned around, and ran in the direction of the lake. This guy. What is he trying to do? Xiao Chun watched speechlessly as Yu Xiaochuan ran to the lake, splashed the lake water on his face, and carefully washed it. He seemed to have reapplied some makeup before returning to Xiao Chun with satisfaction. Xiao Chun Appa, look again. Is my face still dirty now? Yu Xiaochuan asked shyly as he stroked his cheeks. There was a blush on his face. Okay, that's it. Xiao Chun waved his hand helplessly. He really did not have the energy to complain about Yu Xiaochuan's heavy makeup. Besides, he had just escaped from the hands of the Grim Reaper and had not yet recovered. The power of the previous explosion was too strong. The shock wave brought by the sound wave not only pushed the fire of the underworld, which had not yet descended, and the bio-humans on the ground more than a dozen feet away, but even Miss Luan, who was in the air, was sent flying. No matter who attacked, they were all forced back. It was a mess, and they could not even stand steadily. The teleportation point connected to the Green Demonic Valley was razed to the ground by the explosion. Most of Situ Haotian's subordinates who were originally investigating nearby were vaporized by the explosion, leaving only a few broken limbs and remains, which flew into the sky and then fell in all directions. Fortunately, when the explosion happened, Xiao Chun was slightly injured and was lying on the ground, so he was able to escape the violent shock wave. Otherwise, even if he did not die, he would have been seriously injured. If Xiao Chun Appa thinks it's okay, then it's okay. Yu Xiaochuan lowered his head shyly and said embarrassedly, when I went to open Heavenly Gate, I didn't know I would meet you. Otherwise, I would have brought more advanced cosmetics. Ahem. That's not important. Tell me, what level are you at now? Xiao Chun changed the topic with great difficulty. When he was observing Yu Xiaochuan just now, Xiao Chun realized that he couldn't see through this guy's level at all, so he was a little curious. Could it be that this sissy's strength was higher than his? I have no idea. Yu Xiaochuan first shook his head with a blank expression, then suddenly stuck out his tongue mischievously and said, Xiao Chun Appa, you know it too. My talent isn't as smart as yours, so my cultivation progress has always been very slow. But ever since I ate all the treasures in that valley, I feel like I've become stronger. Although I'm not as powerful as you, I think I'm almost there, hee. Forcefully suppressing the churning impulse in his stomach, Xiao Chun took a deep breath and muttered to himself, about the same as me? The energy of that explosion just now was several times stronger than my strength. This fellow was really humble. I was wondering why the treasures in the Devil Valley looked like they were eaten by wild beasts. So it was this fellow who did it. Xiao Chun Appa, what are you talking about? Yu Xiaochuan couldn't help but ask curiously when he saw Xiao Chen's constipated expression. Nothing. I'm asking you, how did you get out of the Green Devil Valley? Why was there a big explosion? Xiao Chun waved his hand and asked. Xiao Chun Appa, you're not going to that broken place, are you? Yu Xiaochuan pouted and complained angrily, you'd better not go in there. It's full of poisonous gas, and there's no exit. I ran the entire valley several times and only found a few waterfalls. I couldn't find any exit. I was so angry that I blew up one of the waterfalls. I don't know what happened, but then I found myself back outside. It's amazing, isn't it? You Xiaochuan. Why are you here? At this time, Tang Tang, who was hiding in the woods, was also attracted by the explosion. After seeing you Xiaochuan, she asked in surprise, "You just said that you came out of the Green Devil Valley? Then why are you still alive? Shouldn't you be poisoned to death?" Hongzhu and the other women followed behind Tang Tang. They also stared at Yu Xiaochuan as if they were looking at a monster, puzzled. Sister Tang Tang. Boo-hoo. It's great that you're fine. Do you know? When those bad guys took you away, I was so anxious that I almost cried. If you were injured or missing, how would I explain it to Xiaochuan Appa? Later, I endured my injuries and followed them all the way. When I was hungry, I ate the dregs that they threw out from the yard, and then, seeing that Tang Tang was safe and sound, Yu Xiaochuan couldn't help but cry tears of joy. He wiped his tears while recounting his recent experience. It's really hard on you. The more Tang Tang listened, the more speechless she became. Especially when she heard that Yu Xiaochuan ate all the dregs of the poisons that were thrown out, she felt nauseous. However, nausea was one thing. What surprised Tang Tang more was that this guy didn't have a body that was immune to all poisons like she did. He was not poisoned to death by so many poisons. Moreover, after entering the Green Devil Valley, he was still alive, and even his cultivation had improved so much. It was simply incredible. The faces of Hongzhu and the other women were also a little ugly, but they still forcibly suppressed the uncomfortable feeling. After listening to Yu Xiaochuan's description, the women looked at each other and didn't know what to say for a while. Yu Xiaochuan's concern for Tang Tang and Xiaochuan was naturally very touching, but everything he did had a strange flavor that made it impossible for them to empathize with him. Yu Xiaochuan didn't mind the strange looks of Tang Tang and the others at all. At this moment, he was most concerned about Xiaochuan's enemy. After briefly recounting his experience, he immediately pulled Xiaochuan's sleeve and asked eagerly, "By the way, Xiaochuan Appa, which bastard beat you up like this? Tell me quickly, he wants to avenge you." It's the female spirit in the sky, but she seems to be very powerful. You have to be careful. Xiaochuan hesitated for a moment and pointed to Miss Luan who was floating in the air. Xiaochuan couldn't say that he was beaten by his father who had turned into a bio-human, could he? Otherwise, wouldn't his father become the bastard in Yu Xiaochuan's words? Miss Luan, who was sent flying by the shock wave, flew back at this moment. Just now, her attention was all on Xiaochuan, so she didn't know what the explosion was about. Chapter 1535. Miss Luan looked at Yu Xiaochuan, who had appeared out of nowhere, in astonishment. She could not be bothered with this guy who was neither a man nor a woman. She waited for the bio-humans to stand up straight before ordering them to continue attacking Xiaochuan. At this time, the flame of the underworld had also returned to Xiaochuan's side. It thought that it would be reprimanded by Xiaochuan. It did not expect that not only did Xiaochuan not complain, but he even thanked it. This made the flame of the underworld feel a little flattered. Sister Tang Tang, take Xiaochuan Appa to the side to heal his wounds. Leave this to me. Yu Xiaochuan grunted and gave a few instructions to Tang Tang. Then, without looking back, he rushed toward the bio-humans who were ready to attack. Yu Xiaochuan aimed at the necks of two of the bio-humans from afar and waved his hand gently. 5 thin lines vaguely flashed in the air. Then, the heads of the two bio-humans fell to the ground with a plop. Yu Xiaochuan. Don't attack those bio-humans. My father, Cheng Menjiang's uncle, and Tang Tang's parents are all in there. When Xiaochuan saw this, he could not help but break out in a cold sweat. He hurriedly shouted, "We have to attack the female ghost in the air and make her turn into a atomized primordial spirit." Then, we have to cooperate with my flame of the underworld to burn her. Only then can we kill her." After shouting, Xiaochen wiped the sweat on his forehead with lingering fear. Fortunately, the two biohumans that Yu Xiaochuan had just killed were not his relatives. Otherwise, he would have regretted it so much. If it wasn't for the fact that his family members were mixed in with the cyborgs, Xiaochen wouldn't have been beaten to such a sorry state. "Okay. I know. Don't worry, Xiaochen Appa. I will never attack the biohumans again." When Yu Xiaochuan received the message from Xiaochen, he immediately nodded. He raised his eyes and stared at the primordial spirit in the sky. When Miss Luan saw Yu Xiaochuan's movements just now, she already faintly felt that something was wrong, but because his speed was too fast, she didn't have time to judge his strength. At this time, seeing Yu Xiaochuan staring at her, she immediately prepared to defend. In the blink of an eye, Yu Xiaochuan's figure suddenly exploded. Like a comet, he leaped into the air, dragging a long trail of light behind him. Then, he opened his 5 fingers and directly scratched Miss Luan's face. You're already an immortal prime." Young Miss Luan was shocked and blurted out. She hesitated for a moment and was almost swept by Yu Xiaochuan's nails. Fortunately, she turned into mist in time and escaped the attack of the sharp claws. Seeing that Yu Xiaochuan and Miss Luan were fighting, Xiaochen immediately sat down cross-legged and began to circulate his energy through his meridians. Then, he said to the flame of the 9 underworlds, "Nethery, go and help Yu Xiaochuan. Find a chance to burn that nascent soul. I'll take the time to recover, and then I'll help you." "Yes, master." The flame of the 9 underworlds responded and instantly disappeared into the air. The next moment, it appeared beside Yu Xiaochuan. While Miss Luan's nascent soul had yet to condense into a solid body, it rushed over with a swoosh sound. "Ah!" Miss Luan couldn't help but scream. She immediately condensed a solid body and floated in the air. However, her thigh was obviously blackened. It was obvious that she had been burned by the flame of the 9 underworlds. However, Yu Xiaochuan wasn't like Miss Luan, who could stay in the air for a long time. After his attack missed, he once again fell to the ground. Just as Yu Xiaochuan was about to attack again, the bioweapons, who had been waiting nearby, immediately surrounded him. They used all kinds of techniques to beat him up. However, after Yu Xiaochuan knew the identity of these people, he didn't dare to fight back. He could only let the punches and kicks of the bioweapons fall on every part of his body like raindrops. Although these bioweapons were all at the first level of the sea-splitting stage and their punches and kicks were quite powerful, Yu Xiaochuan had already broken through to the celestial prime realm. His level was much higher than Xiaochen's. Hence, he didn't care about their attacks at all. Even if they really hit his body, he wouldn't feel any pain or injury. What annoyed Yu Xiaochuan the most was that every time he fell to the ground, he would be entangled by these guys. He couldn't fight back, and it was difficult for him to escape. If he forcefully used his qi to shake them off, it was very likely that he would accidentally injure them. In desperation, Yu Xiaochuan could only look for the occasional gap between the attacks of the bioweapons and leave the battle to deal with Miss Luan. This greatly reduced his efficiency. On the other hand, Miss Luan, who was fighting on the other side, didn't look much better. Continuing to maintain her physical state required a lot of her qi. Yu Xiaochuan's sharp claws would attack her from time to time, causing her body to be injured. Miss Luan's physical state wasn't her real body. Even if she was scratched by the claws, she wouldn't bleed or break her bones. However, there would still be wounds on her body, causing her to lose some qi. Hence, every time Miss Luan was scratched by Yu Xiaochuan, she had to vaporize into her primordial spirit state as soon as possible. Then, she would condense a new physical state. This way, the wounds on her body would heal and not lose a large amount of qi. However, the fire of the underworld was always watching from the side. Every time Miss Luan turned into a fog, it would take the opportunity to attack and burn her primordial spirit. How dare you hurt my Xiao Chen Appa? Go to hell, you stinking monster. Miss Luan had just dodged the flames of the fire of the underworld when she heard Yu Xiaochuan's angry curse coming from behind her. Then, there was a tearing sound on her back. In an instant, there were 10 scratches from the sharp claws. Bastard! How dare you call me a monster? You're the real pervert. Miss Luan couldn't dodge in time and couldn't help but curse angrily. Feeling that the wounds on her back were constantly spewing out qi, Miss Luan decisively turned into a fog and prepared to condense into a physical state again. However, before Miss Luan's physical state was completed, the fire of the underworld suddenly appeared beside her silently and quickly flew towards her primordial spirit that had turned into a fog. Yu Xiaochuan tactfully retreated to avoid it so that he wouldn't be caught in the crossfire. As she couldn't move when she condensed into a physical state, Miss Luan was careless and the fire of the underworld took advantage of her weakness and burned a trace of her primordial spirit. Ah! Miss Luan screamed as she felt a burning pain in her stomach. She gritted her teeth and waited for the solidification to complete. Only then did she lower her head to take a look. She found that her lower abdomen had been burnt black. It looked a little scary. After fighting back and forth for a while, Yu Xiaochuan and the fire of the underworld became more and more skillful. Every time Yu Xiaochuan turned Miss Luan into a fog, the latter would take the opportunity to rush up and burn her. It always succeeded. Chapter 1536. Due to the damage caused by the heavenly flame to the atomized primordial spirit, the damage would also appear on the real body. So, after a few rounds, Miss Luan, who was originally thin and strong, was no longer as powerful as before. Her body was black in the east and gray in the west. She was burned beyond recognition, like an old rag doll thrown into the fire. However, even so, Miss Luan was still full of fighting power. Except for the many black spots on her body that were a little ugly, there was no difference from the beginning. She did not slow down in the fight, but became fiercer and fiercer. Her gray face was full of hostility. After another piece of skin on her but was burned by the fire of the underworld, Miss Luan was finally completely enraged. She turned into a real body and shouted, "Sissy, do you really think I'm easy to bully? Is it fun to burn me?" Yu Xiaochuan did not want to be outdone. Although he was standing on the ground and being attacked by a group of biohumans, he still raised his hand and pointed at Miss Luan in the air. "I don't know whether you are fun or not, but you dare to hurt our Xiao Chen Appa, you have to pay the price." "Price? I will let you know what the real price is now." Miss Luan was so angry that she laughed, and said in a gloomy and dangerous tone. Before Yu Xiaochuan could react, Miss Luan's energy in her body suddenly soared. While she was chanting, she drew a circle in front of her chest with her hands. A transparent round mirror covered with strange runes suddenly appeared in front of everyone. Although Miss Luan had not started to attack, there was already an overwhelming pressure pouring down from the sky. At this moment, Xiao Chen's injury had almost recovered. When he opened his eyes, he felt a suffocating momentum in the air. Looking up in surprise, Xiao Chen's face changed instantly. He immediately urged his energy and stood in front of Tang Tang and the other girls. He shouted cautiously, "Little Nethery, Yu Xiaochuan, that mirror is strange. Be careful. What's going on?" Yu Xiaochuan was looking at the mirror. Suddenly, he felt that the pressure on his body had disappeared. Subconsciously looking around, he found that the biohumans that attacked him had all run away. They stood in a distance and stared at him. No one took the initiative to approach him. This is really a little strange. Ha ha ha. Xiao Chen, at least you still have some eyesight, but unfortunately, it's too late. Young Mistress Luan laughed arrogantly. She controlled the transparent round mirror with both hands and aimed it at where Yu Xiaochuan was standing. She infused her essence into the transparent round mirror and shouted, "Sky shatter." As soon as Miss Luan shouted, the surface of the transparent round mirror suddenly flashed, and then a huge white energy pillar shot out from the mirror, like a waterfall hanging on the Milky Way, heavily smashing into Yu Xiaochuan's body. Boom! A powerful explosion instantly blasted a large crater in the ground that was originally quite flat, and it contrasted with the large crater that Yu Xiaochuan had blasted out of the jade-green demonic valley not far away. The explosion also brought about a shockwave ripple. The bio-humans that had fled far away were still shaken by the shockwave. Even the wooden house was affected, and more than half of it collapsed with a crackling sound. The electronic instrument in the house was also hit by a few pieces of collapsed wood. All kinds of indicator lights on it kept flashing. Miss Luan floated over to take a few glances and found that the instrument was operating well. Only then did she feel relieved and returned to her original place. If this explosion destroyed the instrument that she had worked so hard to make, it would be a big joke. Tang Tang and the other girls, who were shaken to the ground, also stood up at this time with each other's help. They looked at the big crater not far away in horror. Fortunately, Xiao Chen stood in front of them during the explosion. Otherwise, with their weak strength, they might have been directly killed by the aftermath of the explosion. Haotian's spiritual mirror. I didn't expect her to find such a legendary instrument. It seems that your friend is in danger. Elder Heaven Ancestor, who had not spoken for a long time, suddenly sighed softly and said in Xiao Chen's sea of consciousness very solemnly. Yu Xiaochuan. Xiao Chen's heart immediately tightened. He could not help but yell at the pit, and then ran to the big pit anxiously. As he ran, he asked anxiously in the sea of consciousness, Elder Heaven Ancestor, what is that Haotian spiritual mirror? Why is it so powerful? Haotian spiritual mirror. I don't know much about this instrument. If you want to investigate its origin, I'm afraid you have to go back to the time of the Yellow Emperor Xianyuan. Elder Heaven Ancestor tried hard to recall the information he had learned before. I only heard that its power can be multiplied according to the level of the user. The only thing to be thankful for is that every time this mirror releases energy, it needs to be condensed for a period of time before it can be released again. Xiao Chen calmed down a little and immediately asked, is there any way to destroy it before it releases again? Sorry. I haven't heard of any way to destroy the Haotian spiritual mirror. Elder Heaven Ancestor's tone was somewhat bitter, and it was clear that he was also very helpless. Xiao Chen's heart sank, and he frowned tightly. He jumped into the pit, only to see Yu Xiaochuan lying on the ground with his face facing upwards. He was already in a state of exhaling more than he was inhaling. Ignoring young Lady Luan who was still floating in the air, Xiao Chen immediately ran over and grabbed Yu Xiaochuan's arm, continuously injecting his Yuan Qi into the Haotian spiritual mirror. Ha ha ha, Xiao Chen, I suggest that you save your Yuan Qi to escape. This abnormal guy is already dead. Young Lady Luan laughed arrogantly a few times, and continued to inject Yuan Qi into the Haotian spiritual mirror. A strange balance suddenly appeared on the battlefield. Neither of them attacked. Young Lady Luan controlled the Haotian spiritual mirror, while Xiao Chen used Yuan Qi to save Yu Xiaochuan. Although the two of them were doing the same thing, one was killing, while the other was saving. At that moment, young Lady Luan, who was holding the Haotian spiritual mirror, was in a physical state, so the flames of the underworld could not do anything to her. It could only temporarily retreat to Xiao Chen's side and wait for the next order. Ugh! Xiao Chen Appa! The unconscious Yu Xiaochuan suddenly felt a warmth coming from his arm, and his body's function seemed to be gradually recovering. He opened his eyes with difficulty, and when he looked up, he found that it was Xiao Chen who was holding his arm firmly. Yu Xiaochuan could not help but blush slightly, and he said in a shy voice, Xiao Chen Appa. What are you doing to me? It feels so comfortable. Chapter 1537. Don't talk, I'm healing you. Xiao Chen did not notice Yu Xiaochuan's expression. His eyes were fixed on the Haotian spirit mirror, and his hands were constantly outputting primordial qi. Since he did not know how long it would take for the Haotian spirit mirror to condense energy again, Xiao Chen did not dare to relax for a moment. Moreover, Yu Xiaochuan's injury was too serious, and it was not suitable to move him to another place for treatment. Besides, even if he moved to another place, could he escape the bombardment of the Haotian spirit mirror? Xiao Chen Appa, you are so good to me, but unfortunately I am not a girl. Alas! Yu Xiaochuan spat out a mouthful of extravasated blood, shook his head with a bitter smile, and muttered to himself. Xiao Chen was speechless when he heard this. He could only pretend not to understand Yu Xiaochuan's meaning and continued to speed up the treatment. Unexpectedly, Elder Heaven Ancestor suddenly warned in the Sea of Consciousness, Xiao Chen, don't play with this guy here. Use the flying sword to escape. Escape? Where else can I run to? Xiao Chen's heart was filled with sadness. He said with a bitter smile, my parents are here, and Tang Tang's parents and Cheng Menjiang's uncle. Even if I can run away, what about them? I can't leave them alone, can I? Xiao Chen glanced at the biohuman, who had just gotten up from the shock, and then looked at Cheng Menjiang, who was tied up by ropes in the distance, as well as Tang Tang and the other girls, who had a trace of anticipation and some fear on their faces. Xiao Chen gritted his teeth, and a trace of determination flashed across his face. He clenched his fists tightly and made a decision in his heart. Are you crazy? You actually want to resist the bombardment of the Haotian spirit mirror and create an opportunity for Yu Xiaochuan and the fire of the underworld? Even if you really succeed, you will not be able to live. Elder Heaven Ancestor could naturally know what Xiao Chen had just thought of. He could not help but gasp and had a faint ominous premonition. He, could it be that you have a better idea? After Xiao Chen made up his mind, he felt a little more relaxed. He shrugged his shoulders and asked. Elder Tian was immediately at a loss for words, unable to say anything for a long time. Staring at the Haotian spirit mirror that was constantly growing brighter, Xiao Chen felt that Yu Xiaochuan's injuries had more or less recovered. Withdrawing his yuan qi, he turned around and patted Yu Xiaochuan's shoulder. With a calm expression, he said, Yu Xiaochuan, although I've cheated you many times before, this time, just treat it as if you've done something stupid again. How about helping me with a small favor? Xiao Chen Appa, what are you doing? Yu Xiaochuan's intuition was extremely sharp, and he immediately noticed that the calmness that Xiao Chen displayed seemed to be concealing a tragic emotion that was difficult to express. He couldn't help but be shocked in his heart, and he felt that something wasn't quite right. Oh, it's not a big deal. When that spirit uses her mirror to attack, I will do my best to help you block it. Then, you and the flame of the underworld will directly kill her when she's unprepared. How about it? Are you sure? Xiao Chen smiled faintly and said as if nothing had happened. No. How can I let you take the risk? If something happens to you, how can I face Miss Cheng and Sister Tang Tang again? Yu Xiaochuan was suddenly startled. He quickly turned over and stood up. He grabbed Xiao Chen's arm and hurriedly said, Xiao Chen Appa, let me help you block the female ghost's attack, and then you and the flame will kill her. I can't beat her. Xiao Chen shook his head helplessly. Before he could finish his explanation, Miss Luan in the air suddenly let out a shrill laugh. Miss Luan looked at Xiao Chen and Yu Xiaochuan with a mocking face. She pointed the Haotian spirit mirror in front of her, which had already condensed energy, at the ground, and loudly mocked, Xiao Chen, it seems that you and your little friend have already accepted your fate, right? Then, this queen will fulfill your wish. Don't worry, it will only be a matter of an instant. Soon, you won't know anything, because you will have been turned into ashes. Sky break. Following Miss Luan's roar, the Haotian spirit mirror's surface flashed with a bright light again. The majestic spirit gradually covered the mirror's surface. The next moment, a huge white energy column shot out like lightning again, smashing down at the position where Xiao Chen and Yu Xiaochuan were. Elder Heaven Ancestor. And Little Demon. Xiao Chen roared in the Sea of Consciousness. The primordial spirits of Elder Heaven Ancestor and Little Demon were attached to his body at the same time. Suddenly, his cultivation broke through to the peak of the heaven-breaking stage, and it was still rising. Without caring about his powerful strength at this time, Xiaochen immediately raised his hands high, and instantly condensed a thick layer of protective cover with his spirit. Bang! The white energy column fell and smashed fiercely on Xiaochen's protective cover. Although Xiaochen's body had been fully controlled by Elder Heaven Ancestor, a huge impact still blasted his legs directly, and he knelt on the ground. Elder Heaven Ancestor's face was faintly pale, and he gritted his teeth to withstand the invasion of powerful energy. He only felt that the spirit in his body was rapidly draining, and even Elder Heaven Ancestor himself did not know how long he could last. Brother Xiao. Looking at Xiaochen's struggling appearance, Yu Xiaochuan's eyes instantly became blurred, and tears flowed out uncontrollably like a spring. He could not help but stretch out his hands, wanting to help Xiaochen share some of the damage, but just as his fingertips touched his body, he felt a tyrannical energy rush from his fingertips to his dantian, and his whole body was shaken and flew backward. Elder Heaven Ancestor used all his strength to support the protective cover, and said with difficulty, Don't worry about me, quickly cooperate with the fire of the underworld. Go and kill that she-devil. Quick! An old voice came out of Xiaochen's mouth, and Yu Xiaochuan, who fell to the side, was so surprised that he could not close his mouth. He subconsciously thought that Xiaochen was about to exhaust his spirit and die of old age. He could not help but feel sad, and he stood up again, rushed over, hugged his thigh, and shouted sadly, No. Even if I die, I want to die with Xiaochen Appa. Ah! The attack of the Sky Shatterer immediately came over, and Yu Xiaochuan shared a part of the damage that Xiaochen had suffered. In an instant, he felt his dantian was in so much pain that it was about to explode, but he still endured the heart-wrenching pain and hugged Xiaochen's thigh tightly. Get lost! Yu Xiaochuan's indecisive character almost made Elder Heaven Ancestor explode with anger. In a situation where he could not move, he could only reluctantly separate a strand of spirit energy from his body to his thigh, and then he used all his strength to throw Yu Xiaochuan out of the pit, and shouted, Quickly cooperate with Nethery, go and kill that she-devil. Otherwise, no one will leave this place alive today. Hurry up! Unexpectedly, as soon as Elder Heaven Ancestor's voice fell, there was a crisp, kacha, sound, and a crack, visible to the naked eye, gradually spread out from the center of the protective cover. Chapter 1538. As the spider-web-like cracks continued to spread, the thick protective shield finally reached the critical point where it was on the verge of shattering. Watching the white energy pillar grow larger and larger in front of his eyes, the Elder Heaven Ancestor's lips curled into a helpless smile as he slowly closed his eyes. Boom! The powerful explosion set off another wave of qi. Although Tang Tang and the other girls could not clearly see what was happening in the big pit, they immediately mobilized their yuan qi to protect their bodies after the previous encounter. However, to everyone's surprise, although they did not have Xiaochen to help them block the attack, the power of the wave of qi was much weaker than before. They were only pushed a few meters away and did not suffer any damage. Brother Xiao. Ah! Tang Tang and the other girls had just regained their senses when they heard Yu Xiaochuan's shrill cries coming from not far away. Their hearts sank and they scrambled to their feet, running towards the big pit where Xiaochen was. Yu Xiaochuan. What happened to Xiaochen? Tang Tang was the first to run to the scene. The first thing she saw was Yu Xiaochuan kneeling on the ground, crying bitterly. His hands were still tightly holding a charred and smoking body. Her heart trembled violently and she shouted in disbelief. Ha ha ha, an ant trying to shake a tree. You overestimate yourself. You actually think you can block the firmament shatterer by relying on your insignificant strength? What an incomparable fool. Miss Luan's sarcastic voice came from the air, accompanied by a slight gasp for breath. After using the Haotian spirit mirror twice in succession, Miss Luan's yuan qi had been greatly consumed. She would not be able to use the spirit mirror again for some time. Husband Xiaochen. Hongzhu, who had stumbled over, could not help but feel anxious when he saw this. He immediately jumped into the pit to check on Xiao Chen's condition. But just as Hongzhu stretched out his hand, before he could even touch Xiao Chen's body, he felt a burning sensation on his palm, causing him to blurt out, "Ouch, so hot." Tang Tang also couldn't wait to come to Xiao Chen's side. She gritted her teeth and checked his pulse despite the burning body temperature. She was immediately dumbfounded. She felt as if she had suddenly fallen into a bone-chilling ice cave, and all her beautiful fantasies collapsed in an instant. Hee, don't waste your energy. Under the attack of this Queen Sky Shatterer, Xiao Chen has already become a corpse. It's your turn now. Young Lady Luan put away the Haotian spirit mirror and slowly descended from the sky. She looked at the panicking crowd and sneered, "Speak. Do you want to become my cyborg puppets, or do you want to be buried together with Xiao Chen?" Dong! Dong! Hearing young Lady Luan's incomparably ear-piercing words, Yu Xiaochuan felt his heart violently contract and heavily beat twice. His dantian, which was originally in severe pain, suddenly produced a black and red aura that he had never seen before. It gradually spread to all the meridians in his body. Both Tang Tang and Hongzhu powerlessly collapsed to the ground. They stared blankly at the charred and lifeless body on the ground. They had never thought that Xiao Chen would actually lose his life in front of them. At this moment, their hearts were filled with a feeling of helplessness. They didn't know where they should go from now on. Cheng Menjing, who was in the distance, looked at them in horror. Although she could not see what was happening in the pit, young Lady Luan's voice was like a huge gong ringing in her ears. It shook her to the point that even her soul trembled. Tears involuntarily flowed from her eyes, and she felt as if the entire world had lost its color. Cheng Menjing wanted to run in the direction of the pit as if she had gone crazy. However, the cyborg behind her was still firmly holding onto the chain. No matter how hard she tried, she could not move even half a step forward. Woo woo, woo woo. Cheng Menjing wanted to scream at the top of her lungs, but all that came out were low whimpers. After struggling for a while, she powerlessly knelt on the ground. Her face was full of despair and helplessness. Nie Xiaoyu and Li Xiener's faces were also full of grief and indignation. They stared at young Lady Luan, who was full of satisfaction. They had never experienced so strongly that they were so weak and powerless in front of a powerful cultivator. After waiting for a while, young Lady Luan found that everyone in front of her was speechless. Their faces were gloomy and full of despair. It was as if they were waiting for death and could be slaughtered by her. Tisk, tsk. Look at all of you. You are all in despair. Feeling the pleasure of controlling life and death, young Lady Luan proudly raised her eyebrows and said slowly, "I have the ability to bring Xiao Chen back to life. However, he can only be like those cyborgs in the future. Anyway, I will just take it as raising another dog. Moreover, his ability." Huh. As she spoke, young Lady Luan suddenly froze. She felt that the situation in the pit seemed to be a little strange. She focused and looked carefully. She found that Yu Xiaochuan, who had his head lowered, was faintly emitting a black and red aura. Moreover, that aura was constantly increasing. Young Lady Luan was very puzzled. What the hell was this sissy doing? The aura on his body was too unfamiliar. It was so unfamiliar that she did not know why she began to feel a little anxious. You want to turn Brother Xiao into a cyborg? And you want to treat him like a dog? Yu Xiaochuan gently put Xiao Chen on the ground and then slowly stood up. After standing up, the black and red aura around Yu Xiaochuan's body became more intense. He completely ignored the red and swollen burn on his arm. His eyes were full of haze and violence. He walked toward young Lady Luan step by step with no expression on his face. Everyone had their own bottom line, and ever since Yu Xiaochuan cultivated the Chrysanthemum treasure book and changed his way of thinking, the person he cared about the most was Xiao Chen. For his brother Xiao, he would not hesitate to sacrifice his own life. However, before Yu Xiaochuan could sacrifice his life, Xiao Chen had blocked young Lady Luan's attack for him and Tang Tang. At this time, he was lying on the ground without any vitality, motionless. Yu Xiaochuan was already devastated when Xiao Chen died in front of him. However, young Lady Luan had unscrupulously spoken rudely to his brother Xiao. This greatly touched Yu Xiaochuan's reverse scale, and finally made him really angry. When Xiao Chen was resisting the sky shatterer just now, Yu Xiaochuan had helped him absorb a portion of the energy. And now, under Yu Xiaochuan's rage, he had already stimulated all the potential in his body. He forcefully refined the remaining energy in his dantian. Like a person who had starved for 3 days and 3 nights, he directly swallowed the most violent and ferocious yuan qi in one gulp. Chapter 1539. Looking at Yu Xiaochuan, who was approaching her step by step, Miss Luan subconsciously took a step back. She suddenly realized what the black and red aura around his body was. She could not help but be shocked and blurted out, You actually forcefully broke through the immortal venerable realm? What kind of mental cultivation method are you practicing? Why? Looking at Yu Xiaochuan, who was stronger than her at this time, Miss Luan's heart surged with a deep sense of fear. But before she could figure out the origin of all this, she felt her vision suddenly blurred, and then she caught a glimpse of 5 faint thin lines cutting through the air, sweeping towards her face. Shwa! Miss Luan didn't have time to dodge. Her physical body was instantly torn apart by the thin lines. A large amount of vitality leaked out from the torn primordial spirit. At this moment, Yu Xiaochuan had already appeared behind Miss Luan. He stared at her indifferently as if he was looking at a dead person. Traces of vitality could be faintly seen dissipating on his sharp nails. Seeing that the situation was serious, Miss Luan immediately turned into mist and floated into the air. She wanted to recondense her physical body and erase the wound just now to prevent the vitality from escaping. But before Miss Luan could successfully condense her physical body, a blue-purple flame suddenly cut through the night sky. With a burning sensation, it instantly burned and evaporated a part of her misty primordial spirit. Ah! A deep pain came from her soul. Miss Luan couldn't help but cry out in pain. She gritted her teeth and persisted in condensing her primordial spirit into a physical body. As long as it became a physical body, the primordial spirit would not be hurt. Just as she heaved a sigh of relief, Miss Luan felt that something was wrong with her chest. She slowly lowered her head and saw a slender arm filled with black and red aura had quietly pierced through her heart. At the same time, a cold voice came from behind Miss Luan, Hades' flame, don't worry about me. Immediately burn her to death. After saying that, Yu Xiaochuan immediately withdrew his arm from Miss Luan's heart. Then, he pulled the thin lines with both hands and quickly swept them across her body. Shwa shwa, her physical body was instantly torn into pieces. In fact, there was no need for Yu Xiaochuan to give the order. The flame of the underworld had already understood that this was the most critical moment. It immediately turned around and flew back. Its body split into countless tiny bluish-purple flames and flew towards the flame of the underworld. Seeing that Yu Xiaochuan and the fire of the underworld cooperated seamlessly in the air, burning Miss Luan and making her scream again and again, Tang Tang was not happy at all. She stared at the charred body lying beside her and racked her brains to recall if there were any miraculous heavenly materials and earthly treasures or supreme elixirs in the inner martial arts world or the world of cultivators that could bring Xiao Chen back to life. At this time, Hongzhu was also grief-stricken. She knelt beside Xiao Chen and cried like a pear blossom in the rain. As she cried, she suddenly remembered that after Xiao Chen was injured in the Burning Sky faction, she had met an otherworldly master who gave her some advice. At that time, Xiao Chen also had no pulse, but he was saved in the end. Thinking of this, Hongzhu held back her grief, choked with sobs, and began to pray softly, Old Immortal, please save Xiao Chen one more time. No matter what conditions you put forward, I will try my best to fulfill them. Whether you want my body or my life, you can take it, as long as you can bring Xiao Chen back to life again, sob sob sob. Nie Xiaoyu and Li Xian stood behind Hongzhu, their faces ashen. Hearing Hongzhu's murmur, they thought that she was a little crazy because of the stimulation. Both of them took 2 steps forward and were about to comfort her when they saw a strange scene at the same time. They saw a trace of black things suddenly appear in Xiao Chen's nostrils, and it seemed to be alive, struggling with all its might. After a while, a small cloud of black fog finally emerged completely. The black fog said intermittently to the women in front of it in an extremely faint voice, Don't cry, Master is still alive. Hurry up and infuse primordial qi into him, or it will be too late. Ah. What are you? Why did you come out of Brother Zhao's body? Nie Xiaoyu was taken aback when she saw this scene. She squatted down and looked at the black mist carefully. She felt like she had seen it before, but she couldn't remember where she had seen it before. Little demon, it's you? You're still alive? Tang, who had been staring at Xiao Chen, also noticed the existence of the black fog. She immediately rushed to Xiao Chen's side and asked loudly with excitement, What did you just say? Did you want us to infuse primordial qi into Xiao Chen? Is he not dead? Don't lie to us. What's the situation with Xiao Chen now? Is he still alive? Oh. Tang was right. The small cloud of black fog was in Xiaoma's spirit, but he was also very weak at this time. Before he could speak, he was involuntarily sent flying by Tang's sound waves. After hearing Tang's exclamation, Hongzhu immediately widened her eyes and stopped crying. She was about to ask Xiaoma when she saw him flying out. She quickly stood up and ran over. She carefully held his spirit in her hands and asked nervously in a low voice, Xiaoma, as long as you infuse primordial qi into husband Xiao Chen, will he come back to life? Is he really not dead? Yes, Master. Master is still alive. Didn't you see? Even the fire of the underworld is fine. And little demon finally stabilized his body and said with difficulty, It's the same as me. We're both primordial spirits that are residing in Master's body. If Master really dies, then we won't be able to live either. So you guys have to act quickly, and Xiaoma gasped and tried to explain. The color of the black fog was slowly fading. It could be seen that his spirit was constantly being consumed. In the end, even his voice became very weak. Fortunately, Yu Shaochuan and Miss Luan were fighting a little far away, so the women heard what he said. Hongzhu carefully put Xiaoma back to Xiao Chen's side, and then looked at Tang. Without hesitation, she reached out and put her hand on Xiao Chen's pulse and began to infuse primordial qi into him. Although Xiao Chen's body was still burning hot like a red-hot soldering iron, causing the 2 women's palms to turn red from the heat, they didn't mind at all. They allowed their palms to go numb from the pain. Beads of sweat rolled down their foreheads, but they still clenched their teeth and endured.